it's crazy seeing the way these companies work. But why do roll-ups not work? I think there's a number of reasons why no one's pulled off a real roll-up before. One is that I think every single person who is publishing comics on a small publisher basis is a maverick by definition. It's like they're doing this because they love it. They do it exactly the way they want to do it. They don't want anybody to tell them how to do it.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. This is Comic Industry Insiders, a weekly podcast where we talk to the movers and shakers, the people behind the scenes of the comic book industry, the people who shape the comics industry into what it is. We're trying to get to know them a little better, see who they are, see what you can learn for your business or career in comics. And when we think about the modern comics landscape, it's impossible to ignore the kind of pipeline from comics on the shelves of comic book stores to production and licensing and all of the things that comics sometimes feels like comics want to do when they grow up, even though between you and me, I don't necessarily think about it that way. But few people will have as good a view of that pipeline as our guest this week. Stephen Christy has been, as currently is the president of development for Boom Studios, has been in several different levels of development through, 3 different publishers at this point, including a stint as editor-in-chief. So Stephen knows a little something about comics, knows a little something about development, knows way too much about being ruggedly handsome. Look at this guy. It's a little too much.
All filters. All filters.
Steph, you're producing this. I want to knock down his handsomeness like 3 points. Just 3. Just
Steph
just give me some swinging distance. That's all. How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you.
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's good to see you. I'm super honored to be on here. I feel like I finally made it in this crazy business a little bit. But what do they say? Like long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm a fan. So.
Well, I always happy to talk to one of the dozens of people who listens to this every week. So thank you so much for being
by
on.
The day.
Yeah, it's been, all year long we've been growing every week, which is wonderful. When I'm looking at your resume, your career, the life that overlapped with me for a while, by my account, you have a very distinctive position in this industry. And that is, you've now been hired twice, you've been acquired twice, and you've been promoted twice, which according to LinkedIn, there's going to be something you're leaving out, which means that you're either the lucky charm for publishers who want to get acquired, or you're the Two-Face of comics development executives. Two-Face, the villain. I'm not saying you're Two-Faced. Although you're in Hollywood, you're probably a little Two-Faced. Is probably my guess.
It's a tough business out here.
Do you have like a coin that you flip? That's what I really want to know. Do you decide make a decision with a coin?
It might make life easier if I did, actually. I wish I had. So
it's crazy though, right? That I can't think of anybody else who has worked for 2 different companies that have been acquired, or actually basically leveled in the same chain, right? I can't think of anybody that's the truth.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually haven't looked for a job since I was 22, and I'm 39 now, and that thought terrifies me because it's like I wouldn't know how.
What else do you do?
But, Yeah, but when I started at Devil's Due Publishing back in the day, and then I was hired to Archaea by the guy who was CEO of Devil's Due at the time. He was co-running the company, and then Archaea got bought by. No, he was co-running Devil's Due. We can get into this. It was an amazing time in the late aughts of comics, but
I do want to get into that. Yeah. Was that PJ?
That was PJ. Yeah. PJ.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What were you going to say?
Oh wait. No, please go ahead. You're
Um,
PJ.
PJ PJ was brought in by Josh Blaylock, who was running Devil's Due, to kind of like be
Right.
a business development guy and like run the business side of things. And when Devil's Due lost the GI Joe license, there was kind of this precipitous fall in
Yeah.
revenue and everything for the company. And PJ went through this process of trying to do a roll up of smaller comic book publishers at the time. So he was talking to Viper, he was talking to one or two other places. It's like all of these like really small press things. And I
Yeah.
actually said to PJ, there's this company that's run out of money that does incredible work called Archaia. And they have the one thing that you can't buy in this business, which is that they have a hit in Mouse Guard. And as you know, like we can all try our best to make hits in comics, but really it's almost always more quality shining through and building that grassroots thing from the ground up. But I said to PJ, I was like, you should look into rolling up with or doing something with Arkea because we could build an entire company around Mouse Guard. That would be enough to get us going with that one thing. And the roll up didn't end up happening, but PJ ended up acquiring Arkea, and unfortunately, the writing was on the wall for Devil's Due at that point, and he was like, "Can you come over and run this for me?" Basically, and I said, "Yeah," and that was, I mean, I guess technically that was a hiring, but it was
Yeah.
like I
But not
ended work
really.
at, but
Yeah.
not
It was
really. Like
basically a
I ended
transition.
work at, yeah, yeah. Devil's Due ended December 31st of 2008, and then Arkea started January 1, 2009. So there was no time in between, kind of.
That is crazy pants. All right. So there's a bunch of things that I want to dig into there.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, generally the only job you went looking for, you landed at Devil's Due, essentially, right? Is this
yeah.
right out of Emerson? Is my understanding.
Yeah, I went to Emerson for college, and I got my degree in TV and film production. And
Uh-huh.
during the summers while I was at Emerson, I would pursue my other passion, which was comic books. So I would go intern at Marvel and DC in New York. And before I actually interned at Marvel and DC, I got the an internship at Devil's Due in Chicago, where I grew up.
Oh,
Um,
right on. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and that was a very cool era interning at Devil's Due during that time because Tim Seeley was there, Mike Norton, Sean Dove, uh, Marshall Dillon. It's like this whole crew of people who kind of
Yeah.
a very tight Chicago crew who are all like awesome guys who have all like stuck around in the business and done amazing things. And Tim was like right on the on the upswing of Hack Slash at the
Yeah.
time, which was the one big original IP that Devil's Due had during that time.
It's really incredible when you look back. Devil's Due. At some point, I'm going to have Josh on because what a
Yeah,
crazy long and varied career he's had. Like he has just done seemingly everything, up to and including like being way ahead on licensed books. Like you mentioned the
totally
GI
had.
Joe license, but like he was so far ahead on Transformers and just so far ahead. He's such a it's weird. I think possibly for him, it's almost like he's such a visionary that sometimes he's just two steps ahead of everybody, and that means sometimes you're three or four steps ahead of everybody, which is worse, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
He was ahead on licensing. He was ahead on like the vinyl toy kind of Funko craze. Like
Mm-hmm.
years before that happened, he was very early, if not ahead, on Kickstarter. I think Josh is an amazing entrepreneur and kind of like this genius in a weird way. But I think the unfortunate thing was with Devil's Due, kind of collapsing the way it did. There were a lot of bodies left in that wake, and a lot of people who went unpaid at the time.
Yeah.
And I do know I give Josh a lot of credit because I do know it's like a decade later, but he's delivered checks to some of those folks. So I mean, you and I both know how hard publishing is, and I think there's that moment where you get into that period of burn where it's like, oh my god, I'm spending so much money. There's so much going on here, and I think with Devil's Due, the good thing was that GI Joe built that company, and the bad thing was
Yeah.
when GI Joe went away, there wasn't enough there to support what was going on. So
Right. And you're always, I mean, you're always just trying to stay just ahead of the opportunity. So you're always hiring in, you're always, like you said, burning.
yep,
Like there's just, it's this endless cycle seemingly of you're either raising or you're selling, right? Or
yeah,
you're Josh and you just like gut it out and get everybody paid eventually, right? I think that's,
yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. I did not know that story. That's really fascinating. So you meet PJ. So PJ's working with Josh at Devil's Due. Is that how that worked?
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2007, and my degree was actually in documentary filmmaking. So when you get a degree in documentary filmmaking, you go into reality television. Usually,
Right.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
But I moved to LA with a cohort of Emersonians, and I started working in reality. I was a producer's assistant on America's Next Top Model and on The Real World and on like one or two other shows, which was incredible, like such a fun time. But Josh called me. I moved to LA like officially in May of 2007. Josh called me in September, and he was like, "Hey, you're the," and I'd stayed in touch with them. Like I had a great experience interning. They brought me back to help out with Comic-Con one year. I really liked everybody there. It was all good people. Josh calls and he's like, we don't have anyone, we don't know anyone in LA. You're the only person that we know in LA. And I think that we need to like start doing more in the film and TV space and the licensing space, on this side. Will you open up an LA office for us? And Tyra was paying me 30 grand a year on America's Next Top Model at the
Uh-huh.
time. And Josh and PJ, because PJ was part of it at that point, they offered me 40, and I was like, I'm rich, like this is amazing. Um, and I think I kind of knew, like, I always wanted to do film and TV, but I knew I was like, this would be a really cool opportunity because the thing was basically like edit some comic books, like we were doing Sheena, Queen of the Jungle at the time,
Right.
which was being written by Steven D'Souza, who was the writer of Die Hard, and he had like blown up on an editor or two already. So Josh was like, "I need you to go to the Palisades and like corral D'Souza, essentially." So what was fun for me is I was like, "Oh, I'll get to edit comic books and do some of these other
Yeah.
things," and actually editing and making comic books was a dream of mine for so long, and I knew I was like, film and TV will always be here. If this fails, I can go
Yeah.
back to that pretty easily, and I'm still young enough to do it. So I left reality TV, and I started doing that, and within like 2 months, I ended up getting a custom publishing deal that was worth like $180,000 from these rich Canadian guys. And suddenly it was like I was a rainmaker in the company, and that just kind of like
Right.
solidified my position
What
there
was the
because I
deal?
just started. It was a deal to do an original graphic novel,
Okay.
and they were paying for the entire thing. It was like I think it was 180. It was like 80 or 90,000 up front. Um, but what I didn't know was that Devil's Due was already like on the wrong side of the burn at that point. So
Yeah.
that money helped them pay back a bunch of freelancers who they owed money to. So
Oh, that's never good. It's
yeah,
never good
yeah,
when the dollars in are already spoken for when they land. Yeah. Oh,
not a
that
good
is never
position to be
good.
in.
No, I'm sure. Wow. Okay. So you're there at for a little while. All right. So getting back to PJ, let's get to the PJ
Yeah,
of it. So you're
yeah. So
learning the ropes. You're doing that. You're a rainmaker, right? You're making things happen. You're
yeah.
already seeing the opportunity for deals, right? Development. I mean, that's most of that conversation. What is so where does the PJ step in?
Well, PJ was actually the one who suggested to Josh that we should open an LA office. I think. I mean, they
Okay.
might have both had the idea, but PJ was pushing for that, and Josh was like, "Well, the only person we know is this kid." And I was so not qualified to do that because I didn't know anyone. I'll always remember Josh gave me a stack of business cards, he was like, here's everyone I've met in LA. I was like, what am I supposed to do with these? And he's like, call them. I was like, okay, uh, uh, but I
Yeah.
think that PJ started to see, PJ was a tricky guy. I mean, you know PJ a little bit.
Very
I
little.
love. Yeah, I'm always grateful to PJ. I'm always grateful to Josh because they really helped give me my start in the business. But PJ was this guy who came from like the ad industry world or consulting, like more in the tech side of things. And these
Yeah.
guys who kind of come into comics and want to do something in comics. And I think that he really saw the potential in doing kind of an entertainment company, basically. And the thing for me was that I always really I was a legit like tried and true comic book fan. I knew so much about the business. I knew so much about the people. Like I like to say, Mark Waid has a 17th, 27th degree black belt of knowledge about superheroes and stuff like that. I'm nowhere near that, but I do have a black belt, which I think was the thing at that young age that allowed me to
Yeah.
kind of get into these spaces because people could see that I'd done the research and I'd done the work,
Right.
basically. So
You know your shit. You speak shibboleth, right? We know our
yeah,
own, and you see you, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. The Devil's Due experience. It's so weird because it was only like a year and a half, barely. Barely a year and a half. And we did a bunch of deals during that time. I sold a TV show to ABC Family. I was involved in helping to negotiate deals with some other studios that Josh kind of already had going at the time. And I kind of started to see firsthand like the synergy between like Hollywood and publishing. And I should go back, by the way, my last semester of college, I was living in LA through an Emerson program, and I interned at Marvel Studios
Oh
during that
wow.
time. Yeah,
Okay.
which I got through knowing all the Marvel folks in New York, and they were in pre-production on Iron Man 1 at that moment. And one of the last things I did while I was there was I helped Michael Chong, who was Kevin Feige's assistant. He was like, we need to put up new calendars in Kevin's office. And we need to these like military-esque like calendars. And we put them up and it was like Captain America timeline, Thor timeline, Avengers timeline. So it was really cool just to be there on the ground floor and just see the writing on the wall,
Right.
literally.
Yeah.
Where that whole thing was going to go in Hollywood. And this was the great Ike Perlmutter, David Maisel Marvel era, where they were
Right.
above a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Beverly Hills, and like they would keep track of every paperclip. Like they're so cheap. It was like it was
I
just funny.
legitimately no. This is you say a track or a paperclip. I don't know if I've told this story, but Russ Brown, who was the head of licensing at Valiant, was
Yeah.
also head of licensing at Marvel, and he tells a
Hmm.
story about staying up late staying late at the office, getting a whole bunch of contracts signed, deals set up to be signed. He's like moving papers around, shuffling stuff, throwing things away, taking that, stacking things up, putting it on Ike's desk, and then leaving. Right, so it's like 2 a.m. He goes to home, he goes to sleep, he comes back, and he sees 6 paper clips lined up on his desk. He's like, "This is weird. What is this?" And Ike comes in. He goes, "Oh, hey, did you get those things, guys?" He goes, "Yes. However, did you see the paper clips?" "Yeah. I took them out of your trash this morning. Don't throw away paper clips." Le- Legit. Dude is counting paper clips.
That's so crazy.
Incredible. Yeah,
So
I know.
crazy.
One of
There's
the
so
things
many
I'd love
stories.
to do. I know. One of the things I'd love to do with this platform is to try and build oral histories of people, and an oral
Yeah.
history of Ike would be incredible. I think he's just what what a character, but and so developing of our industry. Like
Yeah.
there's no way around it. Yeah. All right. Well,
I
okay.
think you need to figure out a way to do either a book or books or something from this, because the knowledge you're getting from everybody who's been on is like so good. There's I mean, you could do like a new comics journal or something. You know, there's totally something interesting there.
We're tinkering. We're thinking about that. I'll tell you, like, we started this off thinking we were going to be writing books based on it, and we probably will. We're currently, you are going to be right in the very end of our first year. And I'm, hopefully maybe by the time this is out, I'll be talking about it publicly, but the next wave is going to be, theoretically anyway, is going to be like really focused groups of shows. So we'll be really like
Cool.
diving deep on like one subject with different
That's awesome.
experts, like doing 5 or 6 of them. And hopefully in that, maybe we'll be able to develop something written or produced or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
This whole thing is really just about my curiosity. So, who cares?
There you go.
All right. Anyway, enough about me. So PJ decides he's going to start rolling up. This is not the first time I've heard this. I've heard this idea a few times. It's funny. Nobody ever seems to really make it work, which is, I think the number of times it's come up and it has never worked makes me wonder why it doesn't. This idea of rolling up several different smaller publishers, because publishers tend to get started, typically not well-funded, or they do it well-funded and they burn through that first round after 2 or 3 years. Why do you think that doesn't work? Now that you mentioned it, I mean, you've been through this at least once. And you've been through 2 acquisitions. Crazy enough.
2 acquisitions. Yeah. I actually like to say I've been through 2.5 acquisitions, because we were at Boom, and Fox had actually invested in Boom in 2017.
That's right.
And then Disney bought Fox in 2019. So we had a first look deal with Fox. We were very close with them, but I saw this whole Disney acquisition transpire, like not completely from the inside, but from the house next door, kind of like.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy seeing the way these companies work. But why do roll-ups not work? I think there's a number of reasons why no one's pulled off a real roll-up before. One is that I think every single person who is publishing comics on a small publisher basis is a maverick by definition. It's like they're doing this because they love it. They do it exactly the way they want to do it. They don't want anybody to tell them how to do it. You can't, like, if someone's having success at a certain thing, you can't buy it from them and then do it and replicate that success. I would point to Valiant as being a great example of, like, when Valiant is bought out, when it's licensed to another company, like, no one is able to do what the original crew of people did, at that company. So I think that's one of the issues. I think the other issue too is that, honestly, like, no comic book company is worth what the founder of that company thinks that it is worth. When you started a company, you're like, this is everything. Like, look at what we're doing. You're so in it. But when you look from the outside in, and particularly when you start drilling down and looking at the numbers, a founder might be like, my company's worth $1 million. And it's like, you lost $200,000 last year. Lost, like, after you got all your revenue, that's what you lost. How is it worth $1 million? How many years is it going to take me to make enough profit to pay back that investment? And then I think there's just personalities, going back to the original thing about, like, these people being mavericks. I mean, we've all known, founders or co-founders of companies. There isn't a single founder or co-founder that I've met who's not completely crazy in their own way, and I think you need that.
And the more successful they are, the crazier, right? That it tends to be the case, right? Yeah.
The crazier they get.
In a good way. You and I have been very close to some of these crazy people, and they are wonderful. I mean, I definitely think that's. I can definitely see that as part of the chemistry. Is you have to be you have to be convinced that you can do something that's nearly impossible.
Yes.
Right.
100%. 100%.
Maybe that's
and you have to believe it with all your heart. And I think, for me, I don't think I've ever been a founder because I just like, I look at the reality of the business and how it works. And I'm like, this is really hard. This is really
Yeah,
challenging, you know? Um, so, but yeah, I think that's why roll-ups, never really happened back in the day. I mean, and I think you've seen instances of like publishers getting acquired and still having a bit of their identity kind of like, I think the best example of that's probably Top Shelf. Like Chris is still kind of doing his thing under
true.
the IDW, and IDW, like all the craziness over there, like, I still feel like Top Shelf is maybe not with, again, not what they were when they were independent, but they're
But
still,
still, yeah, that DNA is still there. He's still very much. He is that top shelf is still very much Chris, right?
yes,
That is true. I
yes,
hadn't thought about that. That's true.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, fascinating. That's a great digression. I had no idea we were going to get there. That's
Yeah.
really good. Um, well, I'll tell you. So you're at Archaea, and I want to talk about how. So how do you kind of start there, kind of just in development again, and then at some point you become EIC, right?
Yeah.
Editor in chief. Where's that transition happen for you and PJ, right? Because it feels like that had to have been a conversation between the two of you that got you there.
Yeah, it was. We restarted Archaea in January of 2009, and I think we started actually publishing books like that summer or that fall. Um, and we were finishing a lot of books that Mark Smiley, who had founded Arkea, had started, and we were bringing back Mouse Guard, and Mark was still there, and Mark was very much the heart of Arkea, and kind of started the vision of doing really high quality and high end kind of things. And PJ, what PJ had done, he'd taken some of his own money and then some other like family money or some other things, and then I went and I got a custom comics deal with a Roddenberry company, and that was a low six-figure custom comics deal, and that all of that together was kind of the money that got Arkea going. Um, and we had some initial successes. We did this book with Josh Fialkov called Tumor.
Yeah.
That was actually the first book ever on the Amazon Kindle. We released it first on the Kindle, and this is when Kindles were just like, the really shitty like black and white versions, and it was a black and white book, and we had the idea to do that. So that was fun. But there was a certain moment where Archaea started, we were never properly financed. We were never properly financed. And PJ had found a guy in Chicago, this guy, Jack Cummins, and this guy also loved comic books. And he kind of put together a coalition of Chicago, like dentists and lawyers and venture capitalists who put like maybe $1 million or $1.5 million into the company at the time. And PJ called me, and I remember I was on a bus back from LAX. So I was flying back from like Chicago or somewhere. And PJ called me and he was like, I need you to become editor in chief because I don't feel like I feel like we need to focus on like what the editorial vision is for the company and like what we're doing. And I need you to do that. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I was like, no fucking way. Absolutely not. Because I loved editing and I loved doing all this stuff. But the biggest deficit that I've always had in my career is that I never trained under anyone. Like I never had any
Mm.
real mentor to look up to. I've had people who I've worked for that I've learned a lot from, and colleagues that obviously I've learned a ton from. But I never had like proper training, besides the internships at Marvel and DC and all that stuff. So I was like, I don't know how to be an editor in chief. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. But he was like, no, I need you to do this, So I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And, I think that I did not know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. But that was a really fun thing because that really allowed me to kind of focus on like, what do we need to grow the company? What do we need to figure this out? And because we didn't have any money, we weren't paying advances to creators. We had no ability to pay advances. And my pitch to people was basically like, you're not going to get any money. I don't know if you're ever going to make any money. This is going to be crazy. But what I can promise you is that we will make a gorgeous looking book for you. We will make an incredible looking book that will be a calling card for you for wherever you want to go. And because of that, at Archaia, we ended up having a lot of people who got their start there. People like Dave Marquez, who's drawing
Oh
X-Men
yeah.
now. Janet Lee, who did Return of the Dappermen, which we won an Eisner for. Meg Hutchinson did an early book there. Gosh, there's probably like 10 other people that I'm like completely blanking on right now. But so many people came in through the door at Arkea who leverage that in a good way to kind of move their career forward in the business. So
you really did focus on that quality, right? That package itself. You guys always made really beautiful hardcovers, and it was it was an impressive display. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, that was all we had, and I think what I saw at the time was I would go over to Top Shelf and I would go over to Drawn and Quarterly and other companies that were doing these like really gorgeously put together indie books. And then I would look at what Marvel and DC and Image were kind of doing. And I was like, there's an opportunity to bring this production quality to original comic books, and the philosophy. I mean, we all grew up with Vertigo and with Image. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what if we could take these kind of like really beautiful production styles that these smaller companies are doing and try to do that on books that maybe kind of like touch on the Vertigo or the Image, like feel more mainstream, like that. And I don't think it was fully because of us. I think a lot of people were going in that direction already, but I do think that around 2010 to 2013, which was when we were doing it, I did start to see more and more people at Image, at DC, spend more time and focus on the actual production and the physical feeling of the books themselves, And towards the end of Arkea, we kind of like crawled up our own ass. We went too far. We were doing like lockets on books and books in 3D, like stuff that didn't make sense and lost a lot of money. But looking back, if we had kind of like kept it high level and reined it in. The other thing was we really didn't have room and marketing. It was like we had room to really get the industry's attention on like one or two books a year because we weren't paying any money for these things. We weren't paying any money for marketing. And so part of my thing was also like looking at what we had and what we were sourcing and be like, what are the books that I know we can make a splash with that can be great for the books, but can also build the company's name as we go along. And in the meantime, I was still doing the film and TV side of the business, like still taking our rights and selling rights and trying to get that side of things going. So
and using all of your vacation days, I'm sure. Yeah, you're doing all.
It was fun, I mean, like you're in your 20s, we had a great team. I mean, we had so many incredible people that we were working with, like, Rebecca Taylor got her start there. Paul Morrissey was there at the time. We had interns, like the real secret of people, like some of the great people in this business the last 10 years is that they came through the Arkea internship program.
Really? Like
who? Yeah, like Whitney Leopard, Steph, who was at Boom and has gone on to do amazing things. Michelle, Ankley, who's our head of design at Boom right now. Cameron Chittick, who was an editor and is now an author. It was amazing when Boom got bought by Penguin Random House. Whitney Leopard is, very super high level senior editor at Random House Graphic, this kids division. And then Rebecca Taylor is heading up Inklore, which is an imprint that we sit next to. So it was, I was very happy and like grateful to come in and see like, oh, here's these friendly faces that, I've known since they were kids and vice versa. And we came up together, and Archaea was a beautiful place. It was also a crazy place because we were young, we were kids, we had no idea what we were doing. I had no idea how to be a boss, how to like
Yeah.
lead people or anything like that. And PJ was a super anxious guy who was a little bit shifty in some ways. Like he would never share financials with me at all. I never knew what the financial situation was at the company, and he was very much like he did not
You're
say,
editor in
will you
chief and head of development, and you have no idea where the standing is. No.
no. So yeah, I mean, he was very much like, you're an employee. You're not my partner. You're an
Yeah.
employee. And it was funny because Ross Ritchie, when we started the production company at Boom years later, he gave me that same line. He's like, you're my employee. You're not my partner. So the funny thing is, I'm still standing, and both of those guys are gone. So
Well, Ross sold the company. Didn't you hear?
Ross,
He
I sold
did it his
Boom.
way. I know.
Yeah.
Let's don't go there. But I do want to, before you leave, PJ, I have to share a couple stories. I have a story and a question about that period.
Yeah.
So for me, PJ, I was a retailer for 15
Yep.
years, and then 2008 financial crisis hit, and I had to move into publishing. Started at Top Cow. My first big convention is New York Comic Con, and we're promoting. Oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the title. God, that's so annoying.
Madame
Anyway,
Mirage or
no, it was about that same time though. Madame Mirage was one of those releases during that period. No, it was I can't remember.
was it the
Anyway,
Milo book, Berserker?
no, but that was again same period. Good memory. No, this was
I'm
one
a
of the
huge Top Cow fan. I'm a huge
this
Top
was
Cow
one of the
fan.
superhero books. And it was a girl, kind of a clown
Velocity.
face. Huh?
No,
But it's
not Velocity.
Artifacts. That was the name of the book. And I want to
Artifacts.
say,
There you
whew, man, thank God.
go.
Anyway, so the first scene is and I'm gonna forget the character's name now. She's carrying a bundle of balloons and hands this little girl a green balloon, and then turns and shoots the little girl's father, and the blood splatter goes all over this green balloon, and that's this image. So I see this and I'm like, green balloons, blood splatter, let's make them. So we custom make these balloons, and we had cosplayers just as coming as the character carrying, and we snuck helium into the Javits Center, which is a big no-no. And we made helium balloons, and then we ran out of helium, so we just started blowing up the balloons and just like shooting them into the aisles, so they were just all over the convention room floor. And I was really proud of it. I still am, honestly. It was a great activation. So PJ, I remember at one point I'm working the floor, and PJ comes over, and you guys were like an aisle over or something. He's holding this balloon, and he goes, "Is this you?" And I'm thinking I'm in trouble or something, like he's pissed at me. Yeah, that was my idea. And he goes, "This is really good. We should talk." I'm like, okay. Sure, I've already got a job, but let's talk. So glad that didn't go that down. Anyway, but my question actually about that period, I have no doubt. And it's funny when you look at PJ. I just looked him up for the first time in probably a decade or so. His LinkedIn profile doesn't even have comics anywhere on it. He's just a development IP guy, like not development, like not like tech guy.
He's like a tech consulting guy.
Yeah, consulting. During that period, and this is real. I'm going to get real in the weeds here, if you don't mind, because this has really always irked me. You had this beautiful convention display. You would take to all these shows, and you would set it up, and it was like a beautiful. As I remember, it was a really lovely piece of furniture, right? That you had built, and you had all these gorgeous books. And then on Sunday, you would start doing this thing that annoyed the crap out of me as somebody who sold books and somebody who tried to get retailers to sell books. Is you would say, first it's like everything is half off. Then it's buy two, get one free. And then it's buy two, get two free. And then it's buy two, get three free. Like like you were just sloughing this inventory off until it was like worth not much to the audience. And it always bugged me because I'm like, isn't there a point at which you just pay to ship it? I don't know if you give me any insight into what you guys were thinking at that period. It's bugged me now for like
You know
15
what?
years.
Clearly, clearly PJ wasn't he wasn't that great at the business side in certain ways. I mean, he had a really good eye for marketing. He had a really good eye for like doing cool things. I mean, we did that, but the problem was is that you would do it at the expect like money's not an object, but like money was an object. And like we did the
Yeah,
hardcover free comic book day
I
um
remember that. Yeah.
issue, which was insane, which was crazy. But the point of Ross Ritchie would always yell at me for that when we came over to Boom, and he was like, "It's so dumb. Like why, And he had a point, and I understood it later. It's like, don't devalue your stock. Sell it for money. Don't do it for under that. All we cared about at that time was growing our audience, and I think that PJ came at it
Mm,
from a more of like a tech entrepreneur point of view. Like, you remember when Uber started,
right.
um, you could get an Uber ride for like $5, and you would look at their financial reports, and it's like that ride would actually cost the company $15. But all they
Yeah.
cared about was customer acquisition. So PJ came at it from like a tech perspective, where it was like, this is a customer acquisition strategy. I want Archaia books in people's hands. I want Archaia books on people's shelves. I want them to look at their bookshelf and see the Archaia logo at the bottom. And he was acting like we had venture capital money to just burn through, for years. And we didn't, and me, of course, being a kid, and again, not really having access to the business side as much, and not knowing, um, I just wanted to get the books into people's hands. I
Right.
wanted to get the books there. But and also, to be honest, it was like, it's so, how hard it is to control inventory and to do stuff, and we
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
have a big presence there. So part of that was also like, we don't want to ship shit back. Like, we just want to get rid of our stuff,
Sure.
So
Sure. Yeah.
it was a very special time.
I will say the customer acquisition thing that actually does bring some light to the decision because it was
Yeah,
obvious to me like these are people who are just. I mean, normally what you would do if you're a convention, like you're a publisher and you're trying to get rid of inventory on the floor, you just go around to the retailers, and say, hey, do you want to buy any of this at like a huge discount, right? Because
yeah,
you're again, you want it on shelves, you don't want it devalued. So I understood why you were doing that from the just like shipping out. I mean, the drayage alone in New York Comic
yeah.
Con is so dumb. But it makes a lot of sense. But it always bugged me, and so thank you. I appreciate that. Now I can put that to rest. Customer
There you
acquisition
go.
makes actually more sense than what I had assumed.
It goes
All
back to
right.
the thing of, we didn't know what we were doing. So that's the thesis for,
You had PJ and the kids, right? It was
good.
PJ who was not in comics, and a bunch of people who would like just come up. That totally makes
Yeah,
sense. I mean, it's a good way to get new ideas out into the market.
yeah,
Maybe not a great way to build a business. Um, let's be honest. Where do you?
yeah,
So I mean, obviously, so it ends up selling to Boom.
yeah.
Are you how involved in that deal were you at the time?
I wasn't super involved in the actual deal making. That was really Jack Cummins. So Jack. So here's a problem that I see with every comic book company that gets any amount of money, is they design it for, like, instead of saying, let's give ourselves a 5-year timeline, or even a 3 or 4 year timeline, and do growth like this, they want that hockey stick. So we got
Mhm.
this doctor and lawyer money in. PJ was like, we're going to double our output, over the course of a year, and we're going to get to 300 IP. He had in his head like 300 IP was this magic number that would, get someone to acquire the company. Um, and I was like, no, we can't do that. We don't know how.
Right.
What we should do is we should take this money, and we should try to build for like plan for the next 4 years, and build this. Obviously we got to get revenue up, we got to get product up, but like, build organically versus throwing gasoline on the fire and trying to get it to go. And we had a similar thing that happened with Boom that I can talk about later. But I just see it over and over, quite often when money comes into the company. So PJ made that push. The burn started to happen. The money that we had started running out, and Jack, who was on the board of Arkea, which was whatever.
Jack and
Jack
PJ.
actually, yeah, Jack got rid of PJ. Jack was like,
Oh,
PJ, you're out. We're making you chairman of the board. And Jack was like, these are all my friends that I got into this business. I need to look at a strategic sale. So I think the only thing that I maybe helped with was just kind of saying like which companies were cool and which ones weren't, and Jack started negotiating with Boom and with Scott Lynette, who owned the company, and with Ross, who was the CEO. And the deal went through in like early 2013, and then it closed in June, and then Archaia became an imprint of Boom, and we all came over. And I think that Boom was also in Los Angeles at the time. Obviously, it was like Boom, Top Cow, Aspen, DC
mm-hmm.
wasn't out in LA yet, and Top Cow at that point was on the downswing. I think because I mean, like Rob Levin had left,
Yeah.
Philip had left. I can't. Were you there in 2013,
No,
2014?
no,
Or had you already?
I was only there for like a year before
Yeah,
they laid off everybody in the sales and marketing, that kind of department, promotion, PR,
yeah,
and moved all that over to Image Central. So I was
yeah.
long gone before then. So yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I was a huge Top Cow fan, and I loved everybody over there, and I give Philip a lot of credit. He was really a great like connector, in LA, and I worked with Rob after he left Top Cow. He helped out editing on some Arkea books, including Tumor, and I just always had so much respect for those guys, and I loved what Top Cow was doing, and thought they were
Yeah.
all super talented. But I didn't really know the Boom guys that well. Like I knew Matt Gagnon, who was the editor in chief over there, because he worked at Meltdown, so I bought comics from him. I met
Right.
Ross once or twice, but Ross was just always such a weird personality, kind of. So I didn't like socialize with him or anything. And Philip had just gone over there, so I knew Philip really well. Um, but yeah, the acquisition happened, and we got rolled up, and I got to see kind of firsthand how I got to go through the process of getting acquired and kind of like what that all meant, and that was a
Yeah.
great learning experience at the time.
So you're at Boom now. So you move back out of, you're no longer editor in chief. You're back into
Yeah.
development. Did they bring you? Did they already have? I mean, I know Ross has talked a lot over the years, and Philip, when he was on the show, talked about how they were, for them it was as much a development exercise as anything from the very beginning. But did they already have a team in place, or how did that transition
No,
work for
they,
you?
they, they didn't have anyone, and I think Boom was very much. I mean, like Ross was in Hollywood for years, and Boom was kind of like one of the original, like, let's make comics to do IP plays, basically.
Right.
And I think the difference was that Ross was actually like a legit comic book fan, unlike maybe the guys who were running Radical. Like Ross
Yeah.
actually knew kind of like which creators to look at, and what to do. So the comics themselves were the good ones were pretty good, and didn't feel necessarily like IP plays,
Right.
but no, Ross. We came over, and we were still finishing out a bunch of Archaia books, and Ross was like, "I already have an editor in chief. I don't need another one, but I don't have anyone doing film and TV and doing development, and you're the only person besides me now working at the company who knows how to do this." And while I was at Archaea, I'd done a few big IP sales of our books. we got into a wonderful like three-way studio bidding war on Rust, which was this book by Royden Leff, and that got optioned by Fox in 2011. And that was like a, at the time, like a $200,000 option, which was a lot, and a great deal. And we had first dollar gross and all of that. And we sold another movie to Fox 2000. So I developed this relationship with Fox, and a friend of mine. I had multiple friends working over there, but my friend Ryan Jones and this guy Mark Roybal. Mark was our executive on Rust, and Mark came down to Comic-Con and came to our booth. This was the year that Boom acquired Archaia, but we still had separate booths at the time because it was like a month after the acquisition. And Mark saw a mouse guard and he was like, "What's this?" I was like, "Mark, this is mouse guard." Like, um, and Mark called a meeting at Fox for us, and Ross and I went to the meeting. And we didn't talk about what we were doing before that. I will never forget this because this was like one of those moments, one of those like eerie. I'm not like a religious guy or spiritual guy, but it was just one of those moments where you feel fate's hand at work, kind of.
Right.
Um, Mark was like, "So what do you?" He turned to me and was like, "So what do you guys want to do next?" And I just had this almost like either a voice in my head or something. And Ross and I hadn't planned this, and I just felt this push, and I was like, "Well, Mark, what we really need is we need a home. We need a home. We'd like a place to kind of like call our own. We'd love to do a first look deal with you guys." And I'll never forget looking at Ross and Ross looking at me like, "What do you? We didn't plan. What are you doing?" And Mark just like
Yeah.
nodding his head and like, "Okay, okay," and Ryan nodding his head and doing the same thing. And that started the conversation, and we actually got a first look deal there. And that was a big moment for me because, we'd come into Boom, and Ross had like put me in this windowless closet, like literally the storage closet. And I was like, is this guy hazing me? Like, what's going on? And I probably would have moved on. Like I was starting to look otherwise, other places and
Sure.
look elsewhere. And two things that Ross had that we didn't when he started Boom. Ross had actual venture capital money. This guy, Scott Lynette, put real money into the company and continued to put money in when the company needed money. And that really allowed Ross to kind of like build out a thing. And Ross was different than PJ in that Ross knew comics natively, and had been in comics for a while and done that stuff. And Ross hired good people. I give him credit
Yeah.
for that. Like he hired Philip, he hired Matt. He hired a bunch of great people, and I think that the team at Boom was always what made what was the secret sauce of Boom. But you know what? It was emotionally very hard for me because I put like my heart and soul into Arkea, and it was really a part of me, and it wasn't any of the fault of the guys at Boom, because Philip and Matt and Bryce and everyone, like everybody was very good to me and gave me a lot of grace, but it was kind of hard to see. It felt like your girlfriend was dating someone else, kind of, and you had a front row seat to it, and it was like, so I had to
Sure.
learn to give that up and to let go, and that was a hard process, and Ross was just again, like there were a lot of positive qualities to him, and I give him a lot of credit, and I'm grateful to him in a lot of ways. But he had such a fragile ego, so the way he operated was like he had to put everyone down. He would always start these sentences of like, "See, the thing you don't understand is," and it was just like that environment all the time. And I remember we were talking about Archaea stuff, and uh, he was looking at the Dark Crystal graphic novels that I'd edited and put together for the Hensons, and he was like, "You did this all wrong. This was published a year ago, and we haven't made any money on this yet. Like we're in the red." And I was like, "Ross, you don't understand. I know this fan base very, very well because I'm part of it. I did not design these graphic novels to be profitable within the first 12 months. I designed them to be on the shelves for the next decade. and to be selling for the next decade. This is not a churn and burn thing. This is building a library. And I was like, I guarantee you that you will make so much money off these books that, you know, I'll remind you of this conversation years from now. And, you know, when we did the Dark Crystal Kickstarter like a year or two ago, I think that was the between soft covers and hard covers 11th printing of those graphic novels, you know? And so there was just, I bring all that up just because there was a clash of philosophies. And I think because of Ross's personality, it was hard to navigate it. And I think for him, from an ego standpoint, Boom was about acquiring talent. It was like, oh, I get Scott Newman, you know, who's like one of the best designers ever. I get Steven, I get Tay, you know, I get like a bunch of really talented people, and I take out a competitor, and I get Mouseguard and Henson and these other things, which makes sense. But what was great about getting that first look deal is it was 9 months into the acquisition, and I got to move out of that closet and move onto the Fox lot and actually start a production company on the Fox lot. And I was so happy just to, you know, like,
be out of the closet.
I missed everybody out there, but it was like, you know, to end the hazing kind of. So.
You know, you mentioned Dark Crystal, and that I can't believe I didn't even think about this as I'm putting this together, this whole this interview, like doing the research, just reminding myself of your career. And you mentioned Dark Crystal, and it gave me this incredible memory flashback of when right after I got laid off from Top Cow. I was doing a number of things, and I saw people doing streaming video about stuff, and I didn't see anybody doing comics. It's funny that if I basically have redone that whole cycle again. We started this thing called Comic Center, and it was just a streaming show about comics. And you know, back then, I don't even think you could reuse it after. I don't remember exactly what the struggle was, but anyway, you guys, and I remember Mel actually, Mel Kylo, who was handling, I guess, PR and promotion, and then I made the transition to Boom. I remember him bringing us to the Henson lot to do some sort of interview. I totally forgot about that till just now. Yeah.
That was probably for Tale of Sand, I bet, right?
Oh, it might have been. It was around at the same time.
Yeah. We flew Ramon Perez down from Canada and did like a press junket at the Henson lot. I feel like you were there for that.
Yeah. God, that was such a beautiful book, Tale of Sand. You guys, that's such a gorgeous book. I absolutely love it.
That was a career highlight for sure. It's no
kidding.
That's and that's all Ramon. You know, I mean, he did just incredible work on that. So
what an incredible talent he is. So okay, so you make the transition over to the Fox. You're out of the closet. Were you in the closet the whole time up until then? You're literally in your windowless.
9 months in the closet, and you know, it was amazing. Okay. I was like, I can't fucking take this. There's no windows. There's nothing. So I would have, whenever like artist friends would come visit, I would have them draw on the walls. So like there is a storage closet in this shitty office building on Wilshire that has like a giant Dave Peterson Mouseguard original, a giant Ramon Perez original, a giant Dave Marquez original, you know, Sean Rubin, Royden, like all these like super talented folks. And I was like, I just need something in here, you know, to kind
something to look at. Yeah. I don't think I ever got to that office. I don't think I ever got to the Boom office until after the Fox deal, because by that time it was just like this beautiful, you know, Hollywood, like, you know, wraparound decks, all glass, and, you know, beautiful conference rooms. Yeah, it was just a lot of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here. You guys did amazing work while you were there at Boom. Tell me about the last couple years of Boom, right? Yeah. So you start doing, you know, the company you're way ahead on doing things like Kickstarters. Obviously you're doing some development. You have, IMDb has you as a producer on a movie that came out in 2020. And let me tell you, as somebody who worked a big chunk of my career towards a Hollywood movie that came out in 2020, I feel you, brother. I feel you.
I feel like we came out like right around Bloodshot. I feel like
Yeah.
it was pretty close to it. So
Yeah. I think Bloodshot actually premiered in, I want to say it was March. I think we were there for a March premiere
oh yeah, we were
because I
October.
legitimately flew out to LA for the premiere and then came
Yeah,
home and locked down like immediately.
crazy,
Um,
crazy.
and then you guys were out in like June, right?
No, we were out in October.
Oh,
So
October. That's right.
I thought it was closer, but that whole year obviously is just a blur. But no,
Yeah, no kidding.
so the last few years, I'll give you like 2 minutes of setup to get there. So
Yeah.
we start at Fox in 2014. We start getting really successful at getting our stuff into development, not just at Fox, but at a bunch of other places. We get our first movie greenlit in 2016. And then in 2017, Fox decides to invest into the company. So they basically acquired a minority stake in the company, and the idea was, we're going to give you, a certain amount of money to build up your IP and build up your catalog, and in 3 to 5 years, we're going to acquire the entire company, and Boom will be like a mini Marvel within Fox. And that investment was actually led by the Murdochs. I can't remember if it was Lachlan or James, but it was one of those
Wow.
two guys who kind of led it. So, and in 2019, we got Mouse Guard greenlit as a film, and Mouse Guard was going to be like a Planet of the Apes style Avatar, giant 3D motion capture, $160 million movie. Wes Ball, who directed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, was directing it. Matt Reeves was producing it with us, and it was kind of the culmination of Mark Roybal being like, "What's this?" in 2014, and us kind of
Right.
getting that development going and doing that. And then Disney acquisition happens. The acquisition closes 2 weeks before we start shooting Mouse Guard, and Disney immediately shuts down not just Mouse Guard, but like 3 or 4 other productions during that time that Fox is doing. So we had an office of 70 people in Sherman Oaks that were building the entire movie in the Unreal video game engine, and we were going to do the motion capture in the movie in Unreal, and then hand it over to Weta Workshop, who would do the full res kind of thing. And we were about $40 million in on the production when they shut that down. So that was a clear shot across. It was crazy,
Right.
but that was a clear shot across the bow of like, oh, Disney does not need Boom. Disney does not care about Boom. We're like a little, rounding error down on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. So that happens in the middle of 2019. Then the pandemic hits. In 2019, we also started meeting with Keanu Reeves. He came over to our bungalow, and we had the first discussions about Berserker, and started, talking about that and kind of getting that going. And then pandemic happens. We were talking about Kickstarter and doing Kickstarter, and we wanted to do it. And Ross was like, we should do Kickstarter to finish Wicked Things, which was this John Allison book who'd done Giant Days. We published like 2 issues before, the comics market shut down for COVID. He was like, we should use Kickstarter for that. And I was like, why don't we kickstart Berserker? Like, why don't we do that? And he was like, oh, and uh, so we started moving towards that, and talking to Keanu and saying like, hey Keanu, listen, comic shops are shut down right now. Like, we don't know how to get this out. We have to be creative about figuring this out. And Matt and his editorial team did an amazing job putting the book together, and Philip like did the entire Kickstarter himself and was like single-handedly running it with help from his team also. And at that time, Boom was the coolest place just in terms of the sheer amount of talent that we had working at the company. We had, Eric Harburn and Shannon Waters and Daphne Plebin and Sierra Hahn, and Arun was there, and Spencer Simpson. It was just like this really, and Something Is Killing the Children had come out in 2019, and that was starting to really hit and kind of build and stuff like that. So the kind of 1-2 punch of Sick Tick and Berserker during that time, it was really the culmination of like years worth of work on behalf of like the entire company, and everybody, and the Berserker thing was really fun because it was like that came in through my group, through the production company. The book was made by editorial. It was the Kickstarter was run by Philip and publishing, so it was really like a full company, full court press on that. So it was a really crazy time because of COVID and losing the kind of Fox support. And the success of both those things kind of really helped us.
Yeah. Somewhere in those 4 years, you and I hinted at it earlier. Ross Ritchie, founder of the company, right? Arguably the personality that kept the engine going and brought all of this talent together. Obviously, you've got mixed feelings about Ross, but at some point in that, he gets. I have always heard it as up and out, but you used a different title for it. He is moved to a chairman of the board position and goes very quiet. Right.
Yeah.
Very quiet. Can you talk? How much color can you give about that period? Because that's a really interesting, just from a political, like from an industry moving, it feels to me like there are a lot of lessons there, having lived through it. There has to be something to glean there.
It was a really difficult time, and every part of the company was straining. At that moment, we were doing this Kickstarter thing, and by the way, Ross deserves a lot of credit for pushing the Kickstarter and for prioritizing it and orienting the entire company around it for Berserker. And there was a lot of strain going on our side. We actually had a huge amount of success. In 2020, 2021, we moved our first look deal to Netflix. So we got a relationship going with Netflix, moved it over there, and then we started production on Just Beyond, which is right back here. That was a Disney Plus show that we did based on the R.L. Stine graphic novel series that we published. So we're in production in 2021 on another thing, which was great. And I think the best 80,000-foot way to put it, which is the truth and the reality, is I think there often comes a point where the company outgrows the founder, and the company needs more from a CEO than the founder is able to provide.
So a couple things there. One, I mean, it is inarguably a testament to the founder to get to a place where you are no longer needed for your company. Right, for your company to be successful, you are no longer needed in order to take it to whatever the next level is. As a founder myself, the idea that someday my employees are going to go, we want to get bigger than what you're capable of. That's great. All right, no problem. I'll go bag and board some comics. But so there's that, and second, I wonder too, how much of that I've always had pleasant interactions with Ross. I don't know him all that well, but I've always had pleasant interactions with him. I feel like he and I kind of speak some of the same language, something about Texans. Like we both kind of, and Texans and comics, right? We just kind of know each other.
Totally.
And so I get that there's a vibe there that I totally understand. But also I will say that I think you're the third person I've had on the show who has worked for Boom, especially during that period. You all overlapped during that period, and everybody kind of has this, you built something really cool, but there was this moment, right? It all kind of got a moment that want to tell and process through, I guess, as a traumatic way. What do you feel like that's necessary? I mean, we're talking about a company that grew out of an idea and was founded, and he essentially started from zero and started developing stuff. Like he's not somebody like who wanted to make a comic book and then built a publishing company around that comic book and then became blah 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 blah. He legitimately
Yeah.
went into this with what it became in mind.
Yeah.
Do you think
He
you
he
kind
he,
of have
he
to be an
he's
asshole to do that? Is there like, I
well,
guess
you know,
that's
it's
what I'm
funny.
getting to.
No, and it's funny. He wasn't an asshole per se. It was just
Yeah.
like a personality thing, you know. And he hired the right people, and he it's a really complicated thing. It's like I don't have really bad things to say about him. I wish he did some things differently.
You know, the companies that have undergone leadership changes, you see the difference in how the ship is tacked, right? You see how
Yeah,
they are really can. I mean, I think immediately I'm thinking DC has gone through so many different, like, we're heading that direction. No, we're heading that direction now, right?
yeah, totally.
Um, I can definitely see how that one position becomes. I mean, there's market forces are market forces, but you do need somebody who's at the end of the day making a declarative sentence.
Yeah,
Um, so now you've gone through this transition again. You're now with the biggest publisher in the world. Biggest publisher in the world, is that right?
yeah. Supposedly,
Wow.
no, they are. They are.
where? And your job is basically, has it changed any? Are you still you're still working as a development for the Boom
Yeah,
titles, right?
yeah. I'm still working on development for the Boom titles, and you know, I think I would say like 90% of my job is the film and TV development, and maybe 10% is being a kind of a conduit to bring projects from my world into the publishing side of things. So it's
Mm,
nice to still have it like, you know, one toe in publishing a little bit still. Um,
sure.
but it's a transition, you know, and we're going through the transition. I think it's a different thing for us because Penguin Random House is a giant corporation, and we've, you know, I like to joke I was raised by wolves, basically, you know, like growing up uh, uh, just in an entrepreneurial space. But um, the transition has been as good as it could possibly be, and I think everything's moving in a great direction. And uh, Penguin Random House is really investing in the company and is investing in talent and is investing in just across the board. Like they want to see us grow, they want to see us build, and I feel like we have direction again for the first time in a few years. So I'm genuinely really excited about it. Meanwhile, Hollywood is going through some crazy changes and challenges,
Oh,
you know,
sure.
between the writer's strike and the actor's strike and the implosion of the streaming market. But at Boom, we've had a lot of success. We've gotten four things greenlit in the last 4 years. You know, we had Just Beyond, like I said. We had Met Cadets, which was an animated adaptation of the Greg Pak comic book that we did for Netflix that came out last year. We shot a 6 episode live action spy show called Butterfly, based on this comic book that Marguerite Bennett and Arash Amel did for us, like back in 2014. We just shot that for Amazon, and that's coming out next year. And then we have a 20 episode kids animated series adapting Sam Davies' Hex Vets graphic novels that is coming out also next year that we just wrapped production on. So we took advantage of the streaming boom in a great way, and we've gotten a lot produced. Only half of which is out yet. But you know, obviously the great white whales are the you know, the Something's Killing the Children adaptation, the Berserker adaptation, and those things are all moving ahead and moving ahead, you know, in really great ways. But you know, Hollywood just takes a long time, as you know.
Sure.
It takes a long time, and there's a lot of factors that are out of your control. And the way Boom works is that we don't have development money. We don't pay screenwriters to adapt stuff or do our own things. You know, we have to go to other people to get those projects in motion. So our job is packaging and selling, you know, and then eventually producing those things and kind of getting them out there. So that environment has become a lot more challenged recently, and I would say
Why?
that just because there's less money. There's been a huge pullback in spending, thanks to the streaming pullback and the studio realignment. I mean, Paramount is getting acquired by Skydance. Warner Brothers Warner Brothers used to be called the Tiffany of studios, and now they're just in the shitter, basically. Like
Yeah.
it's really sad to see. So there's the studio system is kind of broken, and it's a lot harder to get things going. And we have a very good track record as a production company in terms of like the number of things that we develop to things that get made. We're about 1 for 8 or 1 for 9, I would say, which sounds crazy, but in Hollywood, that's actually pretty good. If you're
It's an
selling
incredibly high
9
hit rate.
films and getting one of them
Yeah.
made, as a production company of 4 people, that's really good. And obviously that is all thanks to the great comics that we have to work with, and the great IP that we have to work with, and the amazing creators. I always tell creators, just when we get something sold and done, I'm like, thank you for making my job easy, because you have to be really bad at your job to not figure out how to do something with something that's killing the children.
Right.
Like,
It's there. Right. Yeah.
it's there. It's there, and that's James, and that's further. So,
So I did want to. So I'm glad. It feels like we're pretty much up to date, and that's great because there were a few questions on this line I wanted to cover.
yeah.
So if you're a James, right? If you're a creator who is developing, and I mean, we all love comics. We all want to make comics for comics' sake and make beautiful comics that are a great experience for the comic book reader. However, one of the best ways to actually build a career, to build a life, is to get those things developed.
Yeah.
For other entertainment. What is there a Venn diagram of things that come together for making something that makes your job easier? Is it something that can be described? Like, what can a creator do to create something that is going to make that job easier?
Honestly, it just comes down to something that's high concept, like that's the most important thing. And I think, you probably have a really good view into this because you've been a retailer and you've been in marketing and PR and you've made comic books. And I always tell people, it's like, can you describe your book in a few sentences? And is it a really cool pitch? Like you think when we were coming up, oh, what's this new book by this Brian K. Vaughan guy? Okay. In one instant, every man on Earth, everyone with the Y or X, whatever chromosome it is, dies. And there's only women left alive, except for this one guy and his pet monkey. And this is the story of them navigating, how do you live life in a world without any men? And you think it would be cool. It's not. It's fucking terrifying and crazy. And this, like, that's a high concept book. And that pitching that, like, I would want to read that as a comic. I would want to watch that as a movie or as a show. I would want to play that video game,
I want to see that idea explored, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Walking Dead is the same way. Obviously that draws a lot from the Night of the Living Dead movies and whatnot. But I just think, like, something that's killing the children. Monsters are real. Only children can see them. And our main character, Erica Slaughter, is a monster hunter who works for a secret society of monster hunters whose job it is to keep this terrifying secret from ever, getting out there. It's like, it's easy. And I think, the stuff that we have a hard time translating and that feels like not very translatable are the things where you have to kind of spend a few minutes, like, prepping what it is and, like, talking about it. And, Mouse Guard. It's Lord of the Rings with animals.
Right.
Like, that's the pitch. Like the Lumberjanes. Five girls at summer camp discover that there's supernatural monsters in the woods, and they have to fight them off and figure out a way to make it through the summer. These things. James in particular has a really good way of kind of doing these really high concept pitches. And just because something is high concept doesn't mean that it can't be a great comic book. Everything that we've that we've done that's pretty high concept um, has a very good chance of selling. The only way things don't sell is where maybe there's a competitive thing in the marketplace that just came out, or maybe something that is in development or in production. No one's going to buy it because they know that there's this big thing coming, or something just came out and it didn't do well. I love Uncanny Valley that Tony Fleece is doing, and we're gonna try to do something with that. But when Tony and I met up, I was like, hey man, if the John Krasinski Imaginary Friends movie just came out and like kind of did okay, I was like, we gotta wait. Let's like do something with this next year. Like it's too soon. We have to wait. So
there's a lot of that you
high
can't have any
concept.
control over, right? There's no
No,
way to
you
control
don't have
that.
control
Much
over it.
like you can have Mouse Guard in development, you can be spending $40 million on it, and it's still going to get pulled out, right? It's still going
Yeah.
to happen.
And Hollywood is a campaign of disappointment. Like you're literally living with disappointment every single day, and the way that you make it and the way that you break through is to just keep going. You just have to keep going. There's been so many times where I've wanted to give up, where I've wanted to leave the Hollywood side of the business, where I've been frustrated with it, and it's like you just have to keep going. That's the only thing. And I think for comic creators, it's like create more. But their biggest thing is the ability to create more IP. It is literally it's either a stock market portfolio or a real estate portfolio, like however you want to look at it. If one of your real estate properties is not doing that well, make another one, build another one, and just keep going. And I think that where I also see a lot of creators get hung up is where they really want to be the person to develop their comic for film or TV. They want to be the one to
They would be
write
involved.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm very pro involvement. I think involvement is really key and very important. But I tell people, I'm like, listen, if you want to write the screenplay, you're going to get paid a lot of money, but you're going to spend a year doing it. You're going to go through 14 rounds of notes. You're going to get notes from people who do not understand what your book is about or what's going on, and you're going to want to put a gun in your mouth. And you might think it's good, and the money will be good, but it will suck your soul. And what I've tried to do, and what we've done to some success, is if someone really wants to write it, I'm like, let's partner you with someone. Let's partner you with someone who's done it, who knows the studio environment and all this stuff, and like, let's go through that. And what I have seen is people who have either partnered or have been in the room. Brian K. Vaughan is a great example. He started in the room on Lost, and you get to kind of go through that experience and do that, and then you learn enough where you're like, okay, now I know how to do it on my own. But it's the same as a screenwriter coming in and trying to write a comic book on their own the first time. Like, they don't know the medium that well, and writing a comic is really hard.
I mean, that was the piece that I was going to double tap on. Berserker. I mean, Berserker's not nearly as good without Matt Kint, right? You need somebody who understands, who speaks comics.
Yeah.
Right. Now, it doesn't matter if you've got Keanu. Still, you need Matt Kint in order to make that work. I totally see that. That makes a lot of sense.
And you need Ron Garney, because the amazing thing about Ron is like his storytelling is so clear. You can hand that book to people who haven't read comics before, and it's just so like what's going on. You don't even have to read the captions. But yeah, I mean, like that's why Berserker, I think, is such a unicorn, because you have Kint and because you have Garney, and just the magic of that team together. So
I want to take a quick shift here, and I feel like we're cycling in. So coming in on the end, because I hear your phone buzzing, and I have a book going to bed this week. So
oh, cool.
So I want to make sure that we're keeping track of both of our times. Talk about you have a team of 4 there. You've gone through a lot in this business. When you're looking to hire, right, someone for that team, when you're looking to have another development exec that you're working with, what do you look for in that person?
That's a great question. The one thing I don't look for is comic book knowledge. I
Mm.
actually don't look for that because
Because you already
we
have it
don't.
and you want to tell them. You want to be the know-it-all. That's it. I see you.
That's it. Exactly. Exactly. No. But we don't need it, and that doesn't necessarily make someone a great development executive. But what I do look for is they need to be they need to be a geek in some way. Like they need to be a fan of something. I don't care if it's Star Wars or Harry Potter or anime or something. Like they need to have an understanding of the audience that we're ultimately trying to, that is our base, which is the geek, nerd, Comic Con, whatever you want to call it, audience. So they have to get that. So I look for that. And then, do they have good taste? Are they good people? Are they smart? Will they treat this working at this company like they own it? Will they treat it like this is a responsibility and a job that I have? And also, are they entrepreneurial? Like I'm not that good of a boss. I've never felt like I've been, that good of like a boss for people. And part of the reason why is because I've never known how not to be a self-starter because that's all I've had. That's all I've been able
Right.
to do. So I do try to look for people who can be self-starters because I personally would not do well with someone who needs to be told what to do all the time. Like I want someone who can be entrepreneurial and figure it out. And it's like, like you looking at artifacts and seeing Aphrodite with the green balloons and being like, here's an idea, we should do this. It's people who can think like that. So that's what I look for. It's a different question for hiring a development person versus like hiring someone to work on the comic book side. But that's what I look for
Sure.
on the development side of things.
Where do you think this marriage of comics and TV and movies and other entertainment, it's so intertwined. There's no way that we can really, kind of separate them out, that the business models all are interconnected. Where do you think the future of that is going? If you're looking into your crystal ball and you're saying this is the area that we're looking at, or this is like this focus out. If you're looking 5 to 10 years from now, this is where you should be heading.
I think comics are always going to be great source material. I remember being in film school and watching silent films, watching Chaplin and Buster Keaton and a bunch of other silent films, and seeing in the credits from movies from the 1900s or the teens, based on the book by, based on the play by. Like, I think people are always going to need ideas. I do think it's become trickier in Hollywood because one of the things we heard from Netflix, through our deal is like them delineating the difference between source material and IP. And the difference is that source material is an idea. So like our butterfly graphic novel that we made, in 2014 that we adapted for Amazon this year, it probably sold, between the single issues and everything, maybe like 30 to 50,000 copies worldwide, plus digital, plus all that. There's not a real audience there. What there
Mm-hmm.
was a cool idea, but like Hollywood companies know that they're not going to get, there's not a real fandom that is coming with source material when they option and when they develop that. It's just an idea, basically. Now, the flip side is something like Something Is Killing the Children or Berserker or Mouse Guard or Lumberjanes, where I can look these people in the eye and say with a straight face, we have sold millions of copies of these books. There is a legit audience here. This is actual IP. There is a fan base that will follow this production when it comes out because they like it. So I think that distinction between source material and IP is something that we're seeing a lot more of. I think that comics are not as hot as they are in the business as they used to be. We're in the era of video game adaptations being the hottest thing right now,
Right.
and comics are not quite there. And I think comics are not quite as hot for two reasons. One, because people weren't distinguishing between source material and IP. They thought that like, oh, we're optioning this thing. That means it's going to be great. It's going to have a big audience, and that's not the case. And two, one thing I've heard from a lot of people is feeling burned by optioning material and then the writer wanting to adapt it by themselves and them kind of getting stuck with a script that was not usable for their purposes. So, I think that those things have contributed to headwinds, and then there's just the headwinds in the industry as a whole. But, I think that people will always need great ideas. I think that comics as a business will always need great ideas. And, we've seen, the good thing is I think between Distillery and, some of these other companies coming in, like, there's good new blood, always coming into our business. So I
100%.
and I'm always, anytime a book gets adapted, I'm happy. I don't care who published it. The rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that it's good for our business no matter what when those things come out and when they succeed. I want Distillery and Chip and David to sell all the rights to everything they have. I want Philip and Jamie to come out and crush it, with Ignition. Like I want everybody to do well and be successful, because that just means that it's good for everyone. So
Amen. More at bats means more hits, and more hits means the rest of us get to be at bat. So yeah. 100%. I see that. That's wonderful. Where do you think, what is the biggest risk? What is the biggest threat to your side of the business of comics, or just comics in general? What do you see on the, is there a threat looming?
I don't view AI as a threat as much on the film and TV side. I think that it's just another medium. Like, I'm starting to see a lot of AI animation companies coming up, a lot of, AI documentary companies that are using animation to do docs and stuff like that, and a lot of AI in the pipeline. It's always heartbreaking when people get laid off because of it or things like that happen. But I don't think it means that movies or TV goes away. I think it's just another art form, ultimately, and I think that the kids who grow up with it, they will not care about it in the way we might care about it. They might, it just might be normal to them. And it also might be a great tool. Like if I was 12 and I could make a movie on my computer using AI, I would 1,000% be doing that. And I would be like, this is awesome. This is such a cool tool. So I think that the comic creators and the people who own IP that can figure out a way to embrace that comes at it from a humanistic point of view, and not a cynical point of view, and knows how to take care of people who are doing it. I think that that would actually be a potential revenue stream down the line versus being an existential crisis. I'm not into AI in comic books. When I read a book from a writer or an artist, I want to read their work. I don't want to read, an AI thing. But
I see that.
But then beyond that, I think it's just changing tastes. Like everyone's on YouTube more than they are watching movies or TV. I think that the thing that I worry about is, like, where do we find homes for original content? That's the question. Who is making original content? Because when I started in Hollywood, people were already leaning on their IP libraries and leaning on their franchises and everything. And it's just gotten more and more and more and more and more. And every time I think like we've reached, I'm like, what Disney animated movie are you going to remake next? They figure out a way to do another one.
Never going to run out.
But my thesis is that audiences want original shit. Audiences want new things. I think that, you look, I mean, obviously, like, Barbie is a massive, massive IP, but you look at that movie, like, that felt like an original film with a point of view, and Oppenheimer as well. And even this year, it's like the success of Wicked, like, yeah, it's Wizard of Oz. Yeah, it's a musical, but, I would say probably the majority of that audience had never seen the musical before, for that film. you
Oh,
know.
sure. And easily the majority of them had probably never seen Wizard of Oz before, or
My wife had never
read
seen Wizard
Frank
of
Baum.
Oz. Yeah, yeah,
Crazy.
she'd never seen it, which was crazy to me. So we watched it earlier this year. But to me, it's just like, okay, you make something that's killing the children, great, that's huge, that's awesome. If you talk about developing it, who's going to make that into a movie right now? You know, who's going to make that into a show? And my fear is that I think the thing we have to contend with is taking a chance on something original is a risk, and you need people who are brave enough to take that risk. I mean, Nickelodeon's getting bought by and Paramount are getting bought by Skydance right now, but when Nickelodeon greenlit Hex Vets, their mission was half of our slate is going to be reboots. We're going to do Dora, we're going to do Rugrats, we're going to do this, and half our slate is going to be original things. And I was like, that's the best strategy I've heard in years, because that's
Right.
you know, you're bringing the audience along for your old things, but you're investing in something new. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but
I love it.
that's
No, you. And the truth is, like, normally I tend to pose this question of what's the biggest threat, and then I say, what gives you hope? And what I hear from you is that there's always hope. There's just exploration and curiosity, and you know, and hopefully, and people understanding that, you know, at the end of a very long day of making comic books, I'm going to sit down and watch at the TV with my wife and say, what are we watching now? Because we need more. We need more. So yeah,
we need more.
100%.
And the other thing I like to say is, like, you know, you and I have heard about the fall of the direct market for our entire adult lives, you know?
Yeah, seriously.
It still hasn't fallen. And I think, like, obviously, you know, the direct market is challenged right now, and there's a lot of issues happening.
Sure.
But like I say, one of the things I've been saying recently is, like, guys, maybe we lost this exact battle, but like, we've won the war. Like, more kids are reading comics than ever before. Like, the sheer number of New York-based, like, publishers who are doing comics and graphic novels, Dogman, Raina's stuff, like, all of this, it's completely different from when you and I were kids and we were like, you know, okay, it's like X-Men and you know, Batman and then Spawn but there was no graphic novels for all audiences for kids or anything like that. So
I just had this conversation with Jim Rugg online where we were talking about how there was a time when you could keep track. Like, you could keep track of everything great in comics. Like, if something really good came out, you knew about it, you had a chance to read it. No one can now. It's just impossible. Between all of the publishers, between all of the streaming, between all of the, there's just no way. It's impossible, which is a wonderful, right? It's just, yeah.
It's a wonderful thing because it means the art form is flourishing. And I think
100%.
while the direct market may face challenges, while superhero stuff may be while Marvel or DC may be in the shitter, you know, when you really pull back at the end of the day, how is the art form doing? The art form is doing better than ever. And if the art form is doing better than ever, that means that there's more ideas out there. And on the film and TV side, people will always need ideas. So that's why I still feel positive about the future.
More at bats means more hits, means more of us playing. So
exactly.
I 100% agree with you, and I have really enjoyed this time, Steven. This was so good. We got a chance to catch up. I know.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see you. It's an honor to be on here, and you know, we've both been in the business so long. It's crazy to go back and, you know, reminisce on this stuff. So.
It is a long, strange trip. And for people now who have completely caught up with your whole career now, how do they keep up with you going forward? Are you on the socials? Do you spend any time?
I don't really do much on them. I wish I did more. I used to be a Twitter fiend back in the day, you know, and I'm not, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on you know, all of those, and I occasionally pop up here and there, but you know, I've been behind the scenes quite a bit, and I kind of enjoy that in a way. So, but I'm always down to meet and connect with people, and I think especially now that this acquisition has gone through, you know, it's been great after a few tough years to kind of reconnect with old friends like you and talk to people and just be out there a little bit more. So I'm excited about that.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Stephen. This has been a wonderful little treat to head into what is going to be our holiday.
Yeah,
So I thank you so much for doing that.
of course.
My name is Adam Freeman. This has been Comic Industry Insiders. You've been listening to Stephen Christy, the president of development for Boom Studios, now and under Penguin Random House. Listen, I am supposed to have some sort of call to action each one of these, and I really do want you to subscribe. But these days, I would love it is, if you just go to a comic shop, go explore, right? Go absolutely ask us questions, absolutely like and subscribe, absolutely go and follow Stephen Christy all over the socials and watch what he does. But in this coming year, 2025, it's going to be a wacky year. It's going to be real weird. And I think we all owe ourselves a regular trip to the comic shop. And I think we all owe ourselves every day showing up and being ready to swing the bat. So thank you so much for being with us on this ride. Thank you, Stephen.